everybody. My name is Brady Munn. I am a parishioner here at St. Margaret. I am a religion teacher at St. Michael High School, and my wife is Miss Ansley Munn, who is y'all's lovely coordinator of youth formation. And so I'm here to talk to you specifically about morality, but in a lot more specific and kind of intro way. I want to start with talking about what does it mean that we are made for a relationship? So I want to pose a question to you. The question is pretty straightforward, but you're probably going to hesitate right away. What does it mean whenever I say, what is a human? We usually don't start with the aspect of thinking about more than just the physical traits. So I usually ask this question in a specific way to my theology class by asking them, what if an alien were to come to Earth and say, can you describe to me a human? How would you describe it? And a lot of them described, a bipedal, ape-looking thing that kind of walks around and it has 2 feet, 2 hands, and all of this stuff. And what I do is I usually just draw a picture for them on the board. And what it usually ends up looking like is I just draw a giant Sasquatch and say, so this, if I'm an alien, this is what a human is. And usually you have that one kid in the back that goes, well no. No, a human has an intellect, or they have an understanding that's a little bit more than an animal. And I'm like, go on. Well, a human has, they have the ability to make a decision that's more than just instinct. What they don't know is they're actually hitting on something super important, something at the heart of humanity. Humans have the ability to will things, the ability to have a free will, to choose it freely and to actually make a decision and will something. When I ask the question, what does it mean to be human? It starts first and foremost in the book of Genesis. We find out that humanity in the first creation narrative was made in the image and likeness of God. Well, that's great, Mr. Brady, but what does it actually mean? What does it mean to be made in the image and likeness of God? Well, we have to then ask the question, who is God? We know that the Christian God is a Trinitarian God, which means that there are 3 persons that share in one divine nature. That sounds really complex, but remember that question I asked earlier of what is a human? When I say 3 persons, it's 3 who you are. Person means who you are. A nature is what you are. What are you made of? What are you made for? What is the thing that makes up you? And so, in the very beginning, we were made in the image and likeness of a Trinitarian God, a God that is a communion of love, that the Father loves the Son so much and the Son loves the Father so much that from each their love, there bears a fruit in the Holy Spirit, that they're so self-giving to each other that their own love bears fruit and it overflows, not only in the Spirit, but also it overflows in His creation, so much so that He makes us, that God chooses to make us. If we fast forward a little bit in the book of Genesis to the second creation narrative, we get to Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve are created, and they're living in communion with God. They're in the garden. What I like to tell my students is, think about the beginning like theological poetry. Whenever we read something super literally, we miss the point of what's going on. Adam and Eve were in communion with God. The first humans were in communion with God, which tells us at the heart of it, we're made to be in communion with God. What we are as humans, our nature, is made to be in communion with God. It's made to reflect that goodness. When we jump into the second creation narrative with Adam and Eve are made to be in communion with God. The thing about being in communion with God, that means that we, as individuals, you and me both, in some sense, our heaven, our salvation, what we're ordered to do, what we're ordered to be is in communion with God. Is to be, when I say communion, to be in a state of union, in a state of being one with God. So for Adam and Eve, God walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. As humans, we're made for that. You know, I always like to tell my kids, give me a list of your desires. Give me the list of things that you want in life. The things that you really, really want. I got really specific things like types of cars, I don't know, like Maseratis and things like that, Corvettes. I got jobs. Some of them said money, just overall. Some said fame. Some said really chivalrous things like I want to fight for our country. I want certain things some desires are really good and more important, and some are a little bit less important, but still good things. When we talk about our desires, at the heart of it, our desires on this earth are geared towards something more. What I desire in the goodness of money is not money itself. It's where money gets the goodness from it. That's a little confusing. But let's think about it in a more simple way. Let's talk about relationships. What if I were to tell you that the person you're made for does not exist as just me or you or your best friend or the person that maybe you're meant to marry? That in some sense, that person is your vocation and that person is supposed to lead you to holiness, but your heart and who you are as a human being is made for something more. St. Augustine says, "My heart was restless until I rested in thee." What's crucial behind what I'm trying to say is, as a human being, we are made to be in union with God. That all of the things that we do, everything that we believe in, everything we do in Mass, everything we do in our daily lives, all of it is geared towards our relationship with God and going closer in that relationship with God. So you may ask yourself, okay, if that's the case, how do I grow in that relationship? You know, I know that I'm made in the image and likeness of God, and that's good, and He is an all-good God, and we believe that. I know that after that, I know I'm supposed to be made to be in communion with God. As a human, I'm made to share in some sort of, my nature is supposed to be innately good because it's made in the image and likeness of God. But with that comes a bit of responsibility. See, relationships have responsibility. Whenever we talk about being in relationship with people, in some sense, relationships have rules. I think that's one thing that a lot of my students pause at. A question I've posed before is, what if I were to tell you that you cannot have a relationship without rules? Well, they stop for a second, they're like, well, I can't, that's not free, that's ridiculous. How can I not have a relationship with that? Like, what are you talking about? And I asked them, think about it. I want you to think about it. What is a relationship without rules? Is it a relationship? Is it about two people or just one at that point? If you feel like there's nothing off limits, is it about you? Is it about them? Or is it about you? See, what's interesting about our God, if we reflect the image and likeness of Him, is remember how I said they love each other so much that they're always working towards the end of the other? The persons in the Trinity. In the same sense, we're meant to do the same. John Paul II calls it the virtue of self-donation. That we learn more about who we're meant to be by practicing in self-donation, in a love that's more than just a feeling. He calls a feeling of love a subjective sense, but the objective sense of love is willing the good of the other. It's an action. It's found on the cross. It's found in an everyday, day-to-day sacrifice for the other person. Okay, I led you down this weird path. I've brought you to this point. I'm telling you that love has a responsibility to it, that relationships have responsibility, and that there's rules to relationship. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, this whole lesson is on morality, right? At the heart of morality is a relationship. At the heart of why we do what we do is not because of this pointless set of rules that we've established as a church, and it's just this ridiculous thing that a bunch of old men came up with. We do what we do because of a person. Think about the Ten Commandments. The first three. Thou shalt not have other gods. If we're talking about a relationship, what does that sound like? Think about relationship voices, relationship terms. Don't cheat on me. Don't say the Lord's name in vain, right? Talk about me like you know me. That if you're using my name and talking to other people, talk about me like you love me. And what about the third one? Keep holy the Sabbath. Give me a date. How many times do we go into Sundays not wanting to go to Mass? Or we go into Sundays acting like it's a problem to go to Mass? Give me time. Give me a date. And see, what's interesting is that God doesn't just create Adam. He creates Eve. And in creating Eve and in creating humanity not just as one person and the true humanity being two people in union with God, a multiplicity in communion with God, that means that you can't just have faith on your own. That the way God designed worship was not to be done just by yourself. That, yes, there is a relationship personal to just you and God, but that God calls all of humanity. And that on Sunday, He wants all of us. I like to say that, even being made in the image and likeness of God, it makes us communal. Because God is three persons. God innately is communal. So I've talked about how, you, in some sense, you owe God something. You owe God moral choices in the way that you live your life. But if we're made in His image and likeness, that means that love overflows. So if you love God enough and you fulfill those first three commandments enough, guess what happens with the rest of the 7? Who are those about? They're about your treatment of other people. The person to your left and your right, your mom, your dad. The commandments are ordered in a specific way. See, the first 3 are about God. The first 3 are about, do you love me? And for the most part, I think no matter where you're at on your faith journey, I think most of you are willing to say, yes. But then the next question is, if you love me, can you love your brother? Can you love your sister? Can you love the person sitting on your right and left? See, the last 7 are about, if you love me enough, then you'll see me in the other person because they bear my image and likeness, just like you. That's a beautiful dynamic of what we're called into. That our God died for us as an individual on the cross, but He also died for your brother and sister on your left and right. And that if you love Him, ultimately, your actions are going to follow. See, that's the kind of thing that I really want to push you on. And kind of the last thing I want to give a rally cry for you. See, Western Christianity, when I say Western, I mean Europe all the way to America. There's a problem. The church is losing more people than it's gaining. by a significant margin. We have more people either leaving the church or dying than we are baptizing or having people enter into the church. The problem isn't the church is outdated. The problem isn't that the church has outdated rules in the way it worships and things like that. Because guess what? Again, it's not about me, it's about him. And then after that, again, it's not about me, it's about the people around me. Because they reflect him. No, the problem is that we're not authentically being witnesses of our faith. And so no one has a saint of today to look to say, wow, okay, it's possible to be holy. See, when we say holy, it doesn't just mean being in communion with God, being that different person, being that consecrated person in life. But if you add a W in front of it, it's kind of interesting because it also speaks to the truth of the matter. See, in the beginning, we were made to be filled with grace. And then after original sin, we lose that grace. That's why we get baptized. We get baptized to fill us with that grace that we're missing. In some sense, to be holy, to live in the church, to live by the laws God has given us, the divine law that God has, that he is himself, the eternal law, but the natural law that we participate in, the actual means, the objective truth he has given us himself. By participating in God, by participating in being holy, we also become whole. We become who we're meant to be.